Hi, Troy Love.
Hello, how are you?
I'm good. I just sent out, I was running a little bit late because I was sharing with someone who has experienced massive betrayal, and is looking to heal. And I sent out a link to your Finding Peace retreat and
Oh, okay.
shared that it had been very helpful for me when I did it personally. But so if anybody's got questions about that, you can include those in there. But it's going to be offered again in April on the Finding piece. I can share a link because I just pulled it up for somebody else. I'll put that in the chat. But Troy is here today to answer all of your questions about attachment wounds, the voices of shame, and anything else that might be popping up for you. So there is a question. Okay, here's one. I'm a betrayed partner. First discovery was 8 months ago with multiple staggered discoveries since then. The latest one was 2 days ago. Still lying, hiding, being deceitful, manipulating, and not being transparent. He says he's trying and he's better every day. We haven't had any formal disclosure yet. I'm finding it really hard to even look at him right now because all I see is red. What can he do and what can I do to try to move forward? Thank you.
So, if you want to I have a couple of questions. So if you want to put those in there for me, that would help. So part of it, are either of you seeing a qualified therapist, someone who's trained in sex addiction and full disclosure? That would be helpful, especially with not especially, it would be helpful for both of you. If your partner is seeing somebody, it might be helpful to have an idea of when full disclosure is going to happen. And when I'm working with guys, I tell them, like, don't over promise and under deliver, like, but set a date and try to do your best not to change the date, but set it far enough in advance. I'll tell guys that if you're going to do a good one, it may take you 4 to 5 months to really get it done well and all those things, but set a date so that your partner knows that this date is coming and it's scheduled and it's on the calendar, so that when those questions come up and those kind of things, you as the partner can say, okay, I know this is coming. There are so that does tend to, I don't know if it relieves the anxiety, because there's a lot of anxiety around it, but it does tend to put some structure in place of saying, okay, I know this is coming. The challenge with the still lying and the hiding and being deceitful, that undermines everything. And so it's another reason why I'm asking, does your spouse have a therapist? Is your spouse going to the drop-in groups that we have at Seeking Integrity in Sex and Healing Relationships? Do they go to the 12-step meetings? Do they have a sponsor? Do they have an accountability buddy? These are some things that he can do that will help him be able to practice being honest. A lot of times the guys hide because they're really afraid. It's not an excuse for it, but it's an explanation for it. And so having some people, especially some other men in their life, that they can talk about it without the fear that the man's going to leave them, like a spouse might, does give them the courage to then have a conversation with their partner in a much different way. Of course you're angry. Your heart is hurting, and that betrayal is raw. And every time he lies to you, every time you catch him in another broken promise, it fuels that fire. And of course it does. I think it does for lots and lots of partners. So you're not alone. And so that's part of why we recommend getting some support for you too, and going to some of the drop-in groups that we have here for the betrayed partners, so you don't feel so alone. Getting your own trained therapist who understands betrayal trauma and can walk through some things and help you do some of your own boundary setting and your own connection with your own core value. Those are some things that you can do. But you can also ask him, like, I need to know when this full disclosure is going to happen. And I need to have that sooner than later so that we can move forward. Hopefully that's helpful.
So, and I wanted to key in on the, he says he's trying and he's better every day. But what I say this all the time on webinars and everywhere else, if his lips are moving, he's lying. Unfortunately, what I don't hear is the action. And Troy alluded to it. Is he working with a sponsor? Is he working with a qualified professional? And please do not do a formal therapeutic disclosure on your own. That is not a do-it-yourself. I've mentioned before, Dr. Rob has a peer case consultation group weekly for therapists who do this work. Guess what the number one topic is within that, highly trained group? Disclosure, and how to do that with the clients that they are working with to best support clients. So it is not something that you want to do yourself. What I also hear is he's so far from being ready to do that. If you're having discovery and he's not coming to you and going, hey, this is what happened, so he's, like the 24-hour rule, if you haven't heard of that, but it's like I come to you within 24 hours and I tell you I lied about this or whatever, so that it isn't you having to discover, because that is, that is just constantly, like hanging over your head. What am I going to discover next? And that he's unable or unwilling, to take ownership. So there feels like, yes, it's been time and you keep having discoveries, but I don't hear any real action from him. And yes, there are work groups on seeking integrity. We have this Sex Addiction 101. I don't know if he's been participating in that. Even that isn't enough. We've got the betrayed partner work group, 6 weeks, psychoeducation. Many therapists, suggest that their clients participate in those. We've got drop-in groups for each and both of you. We have a treatment program for guys like this that cannot get, any foundation of recovery going. We have a 14, 21, or 28 day. That gives them the foundation, that gives them the structure to be able to move forward. The acting out is always a symptom. And I know it's so painful for betrayed partners, because you're dealing with the actions that you're seeing and discovering. But that's the brokenness, that's a symptom, and what Troy talks about is all of those wounds, and what is that covering up for, and maladaptive coping mechanisms. So this sounds very much to me like a person who has who isn't even abstinent, let alone sober or in recovery, and so really needs much more help in order to move forward on a recovery journey. That said, setting that aside, you are not responsible for what he does or doesn't do. This isn't about you. From that standpoint, you, as Troy said, support for you, getting a qualified, pro-dependent, aligned support professional. There's a drop-in group today at 12:30. There's another one tomorrow morning at 8:30 Pacific time zone. Translated if you aren't in Pacific time zone. But there's so much support for you. If you have questions, email me. I'll send you links. Tammy, TAMI at seekingintegrity.com. But this, to me, the fundamental issue is, trying to have a formal therapeutic disclosure with somebody who is still acting out and lying. Guess what? You'll be one of those that has multiple formal therapeutic disclosures. So stop the problematic behavior, and having a plan to move forward differently shifts things. But again, nothing you did or didn't do caused that. You can't control it. You can set healthy boundaries for you. So the long-winded answers, but yeah, I'm so sorry. He's not being transparent. He's lying, and he says he's trying. That just, Dr. Rob uses it sets my hair on fire. He has no hair. I do, but when I hear, oh, I'm trying, like, what are your actions that are showing that you're doing things? We're not going to do it perfectly, but action, not lip service. Okay. After formal therapeutic disclosure and the impact statement, what is the format and goal of a restitution letter written by the betrayer? So that to me, like, this goes back to work with your qualified professionals. They should be explaining that entire process in a, but in a nutshell, Dr. Rob, and I'm sorry, Troy, but in a nutshell, Dr. Rob has talked about, for somebody who has, financially impacted, they may, part of the restitution is I'm going to get a second job and make up funds to restore to the, but that would be really important to ask your qualified professional. What are your thoughts? You are a qualified professional, so.
So when you think about restitution, the legal definition is to try and restore back what was lost. So it's easy to do that when there's a financial amount tacked to it. But what do you do when your freedom was lost? What do you do when your safety was lost? What do you do when your privacy was lost? Those kind of things. And so when we're working with a person to make restitution, we are trying to help them find a way to restore what was lost. So the format is going to look different depending on each particular situation and what was done and not done. The letter is really another opportunity for the person who caused the harm to own what they did without excuse, without blame, without justifying anything, but just to say, yes, I can see that this caused pain, and I am practicing empathy. I'm putting myself in your shoes and trying to figure out what that would have been like for you. And here's what I want to do to try and restore what I can restore. Some things can't be restored, but it's part of the, when we look at the 12 steps, it's part of the amends process when we get to step 7, 8, 9, those kind of things where we recognize that what we've done has caused harm to somebody. That's the point, to try and restore when it's appropriate to do so, to put back in pieces what was broken, if we can.
Yes, and it won't be perfect. I mean, it's like, once a plate is broken, you can glue it and, but you'll still see the seam. Now, I do think, like if you break a bone, where it heals, you won't break a bone in the same exact place again because it's stronger. So like all of these wounds, I really do believe that our brokenness can become our strengths. We just have to do a lot of work. So, okay. This person says, I'm looking for my biological father after 40 years. The Bureau found him, I heard this week. They cannot give me any information without his consent and vice versa. They will contact him that I am looking for him. I suspected he has 2 kids, but he has more, they told me. That made me angry because it means he took care of these children and not me. He abandoned me. How can I cope with this? Also, I don't know his reactions yet, if he wants to see me or not. I cried all day today. I did not even know the father wound was so deep.
Well, number one, thank you for sharing. As an adopted person myself, I can relate to that abandonment wound being profound. And it makes it hard. Part of why the abandonment wound in particular is so challenging is because we don't have any answers. We don't understand why decisions were made and when they were made. And it's a catch-22, because on one hand, if we find our biological people, there's a lot of healing that can happen, and there's also a lot of more harm that can happen as well with both of those. So first of all, I love that you said, I mean, I don't love that you are hurting, but I love that you said, I didn't even know that my father wound was so deep. And to be able to honor that and say, this is actually a lot bigger of a wound than I thought. I'll give you, I can relate to that when I was in therapy. And my therapist said, like, look, you were in your mother's womb for 9 months. You heard her heartbeat. You heard her you heard her stomach sounds, you heard her voice, and then one day it was all gone. And although as a baby, I don't remember any of that. That's pretty profound, and I cried a lot. So that is profound. And because you don't know, then it's really easy for the shadows to make up all kinds of stories, like I wasn't wanted, there must have been something wrong with me. He has had more children, why did he love them more than he loved me, all those kind of things. And uh until we know what's actually true, it's hard not to tell those stories, but I understand why we tell those stories. So first, being kind to yourself, and recognizing that it's hurtful. Talk to people who can have some empathy and understanding and aren't going to say, well, just get over it, or give you life lessons, to be able to hold space as you work through that. And I'm hopeful that he will want to reach out to you. I'm hopeful that as the Bureau connects with him and says, hey, your child is looking for you, that he may be willing to reach out to you. I'm hoping. I would love to hear more about how that goes as you continue. I don't know how long ago it was that you found the information, but I there's a lot, and I'm sure you've thought about this. There's a lot that goes into play. When I was looking for my biological parents, I was really afraid that especially my biological mother hadn't told anybody about me. And so on one hand, I really wanted to find her, but on the other hand, I didn't want to ruin her life. And interestingly, she didn't want to find me for the exact same reason. She was really afraid that she was going to ruin my life, and she didn't want to interfere. And so it wasn't at all because she didn't love me. It was because she didn't want to make my life harder. So my story is not the same as everyone else's, but um, I love that you're reaching out, and your abandonment wound is real, and it's worthy of being cared for and tended to.
So what happens? Let's play this out. So say biological dad is so filled with shame that he in his own humanity he can't see a path to connect. How does someone continue to move forward? If that happens.
So when so that then becomes rejection, right? So then that wound is rejection. And what's the story that I end up believing about myself because of rejection? Well, I wasn't good enough. There was something wrong with me. And it's those stories that cause us the suffering. And so when we can take a look at, well, I'm enough, and it takes some work, and sometimes it takes a therapist to help you do this, but to recognize that whatever's going on with him is not a reflection of me and my worth or my value. Like, there's something going on with him. Does it still hurt and the hole is still big? Yeah. But to also be able to check in with myself and say, but what do I know to be true about me? That I'm worthy of love. Who do I have in my life that I've created connections with? Who can I practice acceptance for, including myself? How can I accept me? How can I love me? How can I not abandon myself? And how can I do that for the people that I love? Because I never want them to feel the way that I felt.
And one more point on this, because he mentions the anger at the other children. So, and the story he's telling himself about that is, oh, this person wanted them. So it feels there's so many pieces to
Mhm.
this.
Yeah. So anger is a core emotion. And we live in a culture where we're told not that we shouldn't feel anger, but your anger is valid. Especially if that story turns out to be true. I'm hearing that underneath it is a sense of loss, and again the story of, well, what's wrong with me that you wouldn't want to invest in me, but you have these other two kids that you've done things for. Like, what's wrong with me? So I hear that, and your anger is totally welcome. And every every experience, I know somebody, I won't say who it is because it's not, it's, I know somebody who reached out to their father, their biological father, and he said, you know, I'm just not in a place where I can have a relationship with you. And that was so hurtful for him. It was really hurtful. Um, that's not usually the case. And most of the times that I talk to people who have found their adopted parents, that's not usually that, but that does happen sometimes. So it's try not to get your hopes up, but to also have hope. That's a weird thing to say, but to recognize there are going to be so many things that are going to come on. To be honest, when I found my biological mother, my biological brother was angry with me. And we had to work through that for a while because all of a sudden I became the oldest. And so there
Oh,
was a displacement that happened. And so we had to work through that. So those emotions, they're all normal and we work through it. And you'll get to the other side. I believe in that.
yeah, yeah, and you know, and honor, you know, I mean, honor the grief and the pain. I had put, just for consideration, I had put, Troy does a retreat, intensive, on attachment wounds. It's the Finding Peace. I did put the link in the chat. It is in person, and that may be something to consider as well. Okay, so the next question, let me put my glasses on. Is it okay to do a disclosure with a couples therapist who's a CSAT, but two individual therapists is not, as long as they all work together? Is there anywhere with information specifically to give individual therapists about helping us prepare for disclosure?
So, yeah, that's fine. If you have a CSAT, the CSAT probably would be like the director. Um, and what I would recommend is that the CSAT is after having informed consents signed so that they can talk to each other, have the therapists all talk to each other and talk about what's going to happen, how is this going to go down, who's doing what role is going to happen. The purpose of having the therapist in the room is to provide support for each party. So if there's one therapist who's conducting it and then the other two are there to provide support, that's totally okay. And the CSAT, like whoever's in charge, but I would assume it's a CSAT because they're the one who has training, would be educating the individual therapists on what to do, giving them some resources of what they can learn and what they can prepare for and how they can support each one of you in the process. So there would be a lot of collaboration, but yeah, that would be okay, I think.
The person who has the training, I would lean into that, and yes, and like I have all kinds of reactions to this, but your journey is your journey, and you know, to me, I have concern, not so much for you, but the accountability with you know, with your husband, because um, a generalist therapist isn't trained for this specific work. And so making sure that the CSAT is guiding the process for the preparation of his, you know, his document would be, would be, I hope, you know, something that is happening, as, you know, like you said, as long as they all, you know, work together. So,
I will say I do know some CSATs who will not do a full disclosure with another therapist if that therapist is also not a CSAT. So you need to
yes.
talk with your CSAT about what their boundaries are around that.
Yes. And yeah, I mean, this is, you want to do it well and you want to do it once, you know, like I just cringe when I hear, you know, we're on our fourth disclosure, you know, like, no, like something is like, this is not, you know, this is, you know, you want to do it and have a foundation of recovery on which to build. So getting, you know, getting the right support, betrayal trauma, you know, I think there's a lot of good therapists who can, you know, gain enough information to support you, hopefully from a prodependent lens, so that's less, but it's the addict, like the accountability, the making sure that, the document is tight, that, things are well prepared, that there isn't wiggle room. So, but if the CSAT is willing to oversee all of this, uh, rock on, and they can come to Dr. Rob's peer case consultation group to talk about it too. No names are ever used. Please, no names are ever used. How do you get through all of this if you can't afford professional help? We have lots of resources on Seeking Integrity, the drop-in groups, webinars, etc. This is really important. This is like, to me, I would look at my budget and figure out what I could cut out. Like, honestly, I would be going, what don't I need? And it might be, cable TV or whatever it is. This is critically important. It isn't forever, but man, getting the right help makes a huge difference. And I often say this to people who are calling in: what is it going to cost you if you don't get the right help? And that can be a lens too. So, I mean, it's easy to go, oh, this is so expensive, but many therapists, even if they don't take insurance, will provide a super bill that you can get partial reimbursement. Can you do it on your own? Yeah. Like, I think of it as like doing surgery on myself. That's not a great choice, so I want everybody to have the best help. But yeah, lots of people go to 12-step, lots of people do our drop-in groups and or the low cost work groups, so yes, you can. There's a lot of information out there. Sometimes it's helpful, sometimes it's really not. I'm hearing some really sad cases of people who are getting off a recovery path because so what are your thoughts, Troy?
I would agree that finding a way you are worth the investment of that. I also understand that there are some times when situation are such. So in most of the states in the United States, they do have some insurance programs that help people get care that way. And there's usually a variety of therapists, even on those panels from which you can choose. They may or may not be CSATs, but if they are qualified, that's funny. Person says they're in Canada. So I'm in the United States, so I don't know how Canadian healthcare works. Sometimes I'm jealous of Canadian healthcare, but
I'm not, so
okay.
I know too many stories, so yeah.
Right. Yeah. So so I don't know how it works. We do have free resources, and there are some places that do offer grants to people who are they're nonprofit organizations who offer grants to help people in recovery. So you may want to reach out to some of the victim advocacy centers in your area and see if they have any grants or any kind of financial support that's available that may be able to point you in the right direction for that as well.
Yeah, and wherever you are, I mean, honestly, I mean, we have people literally all over the world, and I mean, like, there are some places where it isn't just the cost. There aren't professionals around, but for example, I had somebody that reached out and he says, I'm paid in pesos. Well, coming up with pesos to pay for American healthcare is different. So there are, please lean into the resources. I did type into, Debbie McCrae did a 2-part webinar. It's posted on our website. You can always email me, Tammy, TAMI at Seeking Integrity, and I'll give you some more specific links. But she did it on grief, and there's a process, if you're there's a process to grief, and so lean into, there's hundreds, probably even 1,000 hours of previously recorded webinars that can help. Dr. Rob's podcast series, Troy Love has been a guest, has had 1.2 million downloads. I mean, and he's got 2 new ones. I started listening to one and got interrupted, so I have to go back to it. But one of them is on the epigenetics, fascinating. That's the one I'm in the middle of. And then Dr. Ken Adams, who did the Mother and Mesh Men, just did one on adult children of sex addicts. So there's resources, and yes, you can, I promise you, leaning into those. I had one guy that was, every time I think about relapsing, he listened to a podcast. Free, great, 24/7, great, so just going, what do I need right in this moment, to help me? A lot of that, mindfulness, breathing exercises, journaling. I mean, free, and and real supportive. So, okay, Troy, can you do a quick rundown on how betrayal trauma is linked to attachment theory? I keep hearing that it is an attachment wound, but I'm not sure I understand. I have an anxious style. I'm not sure about my partner, but I believe he is avoidant, as he often avoids intimacy.
Yep. So attachment theory and attachment wounds overlap, but they're not entirely the same thing. But they're grounded in the same principle, which is that we are wired for connection. We thrive better when we have healthy connections in our lives. What damages that, or what makes it harder to connect with each other, is when we have wounds, these attachment wounds. So if something happens in our relationships that causes us pain or distress, we end up finding ways to protect ourselves in order to try and not have that experience hit again. So I'm gonna put the wounds behind me. So
let me make sure that I got you set as co-host so you can.
yeah.
You can. Oh, good.
Yeah.
Yay.
So
love it when it works.
yeah. So those are the 6 attachment wounds: loss, neglect, rejection, abandonment, betrayal, and abuse. So betrayal is one of those attachment wounds, where you had a relationship of trust with somebody and then they did something that violated that trust. And so now I'm uncertain about whether or not I can trust you again, or I'm uncertain whether I can trust anybody again, depending on how big that wound is. So think about it like a sunburn. Like when I have a sunburn, I'm really protective of not wanting people to bump up against my wounds. So that's the attachment wound side of things. And then on the attachment theory side of things, we have anxious attachment style on one side, and then we have avoidant attachment style on the other. And then in the middle, we have secure attachment style. So some people, when they have attachment wounds, have an anxious attachment style. So instead of putting up walls to try and protect themselves, they become very clingy. And I don't mean that in a derogatory way. They become very clingy, very needy. They need people to reassure and provide reassurance that I'm enough and that you're there and you're not going to leave and that I can trust you and those kind of things. And we watch even children as young as like 18 months old who have an anxious attachment style. They're just really afraid their parents are going to leave them, and so they cry and they demand a lot of attention from their parents because they need that reassurance. And then on the other side, we have avoidant attachment style, which is like, I don't need anybody. I can do it all on my own. And those are the ones who really put up the walls, who say like, no, I'm going to just do it by myself. Even then, though, we're still wired for connection. So it is very common for somebody who has an anxious attachment style to get coupled with somebody who has an avoidant attachment style, and then the game begins. You chase, the other one's away. You chase, the other one runs away. And sometimes it flips the other way, but that's a really predictable pattern that we see in lots and lots of relationships. So if your spouse is avoidant, he avoids, I love that you say intimacy. He avoids intimacy because it's so vulnerable. If he lets you in, or anybody for that matter, he might be at risk of being rejected, abandoned, betrayed, lost, all those things. And so he finds ways to like protect himself, which actually makes it worse. It doesn't, it makes the wounds even more raw because they're even more alone. Conversely, the person who has an anxious attachment style, they get soothed when they have that. So part of the journey is figuring out how to both come together into that secure attachment style where I know that I can trust you and I know that I'm enough. I can do some self-soothing for myself when I'm overwhelmed, but I can also ask for support from you, and we can have an interdependent relationship where I still have some of my own dependence and you have some of your own, but I can also turn to you for support. So hopefully that helps.
It is, and but I think it's fascinating, like you said, and then the game begins, and I'm like, but it's just fascinating to me that, I mean, such opposite attachment styles, are attracted to each other, and and I was thinking too, the fear on both sides of that, like, oh, I have to protect myself, but I need you, I have to protect myself, and how it doesn't help either person, have a secure attachment, and for the and for the person who's avoidant, and I'm making this up, but it seems to me that, like, the being willing, to try, has to feel like, just like, oh, it's so hard, but man, like, if you start, and get a little bit of, like, okay, that worked out, and wow, it can really shift things. So, but it's also interesting to me that, you talk about little tiny kids, and so so, and I don't know if it's environment, or it's just genetic, or, I mean, it's just fascinating, but here's where we are, here's what we got, so how do we work with that, and connect in a healthy way. Okay, next question. My SLA or husband has been sober for 4 years, but not really in recovery. He has not worked on the underlying issues and has dropped from 12 step 6 years ago. So, but he's been sober for 4 years. Okay, he wants to. Oh, he now wants to leave. Healthy boundary should be to let him go, and I'm having a hard time doing it. How can I move forward? Oh, I'm sorry.
Well, I guess I'd be, if you were in my office, I'd be asking, well, what does moving forward mean to you? Does moving forward mean with him or without him? Does it mean letting him go? Uh, what do you want? And what do you not want? So at the end of the day, it comes to what is true about you. You've given me some facts about he's been sober, but not in recovery, which means he probably still has some issues with anger and isolation and those kind of things. He may sometimes lie or not be completely honest. He's sounds like he's backed away from some of the support systems. Some people don't like 12 steps, some people love them, but there are other ways to get support. Even if you don't go to a 12 step, there's other groups that are out there that are just as great. So, but if he's dropped all that, then he's doing his thing, and now he's telling you he wants to leave. What does that mean for you? Is that hitting a rejection wound for you? Is it an abandonment wound for you? Is it a betrayal wound for you? Is it all of the above wounds for you? And what does that mean for you? When you're able to connect with the truth that you're enough and you matter, even though it is absolutely scary, and it comes, like, we worry about finances and if there's kids involved, or like, how's this going to affect the kids and all of those kind of things. When you come to a place of really connecting with the truth that you're enough, you have what it takes, you do have skills and talents and abilities and resources and people in your life. When you can connect with that, what does your body do? Does it tense up and get super nervous, or does it relax and lean into it? And sometimes it's like, one moment I'm in a place of groundedness and the next minute I'm really freaking out, and then the next minute I'm like, so it's not like constant, but it's reminding myself, okay, what is true? Who can I reach out to? Where can I go to get some support for myself? I honestly believe that when you connect with the truth that's deep inside your gut and your heart and your spirit will help you do what is in the best interest of you and the people you love. And that may mean letting him go. But working on connecting with your truth is how I would recommend that you move forward. And it's hard, but you are enough and you matter.
So I thought of three things for you. Email me because I'll give you links, for those resources specifically for this. But it is grief work. But here's the other thing, I've mentioned before, Dr. Rob did a podcast with Dr. Stan Tatkin called We Do. And for those of you where you're putting the relationship as primary, you are healthier together, you're working together to move forward. But if that's not the case, then, then it is not only emotionally not healthy, but physically not healthy and all of those things. So understanding that in a relationship where someone is actually working on their recovery, this person, I don't even know if he's been sober or abstinent for 4 years. Who knows? Doesn't matter. You've got somebody who's stuck. And I saved a little quote that says, sometimes we're stuck because we want to be, and it's in the muck, but yeah, we can get really comfortable being stuck and fearful of doing things different. And when that drags down a partner, I hate it for the addict, but I hate it for the partner too. So, but it is acceptance. I know a lot of partners that go, I know in my head I should leave, but their heart isn't there yet. Give yourself the space to figure it out. If it's a good idea today, it'll be a good idea tomorrow too. But do email me, Tammy, TAMI at Seeking Integrity. Let me know. Remind me of this because I get a lot of emails, but I've got 3 resources specifically that may be useful for you as well. So, okay, next one. I'm struggling with feeling okay with my wife's asking for a healing separation after 2 years after discovery. We are both dealing with her betrayal pain in my intensive CSAT therapy and group work in SA, a 12-step from severe childhood physical and emotional abuse. After a year with an EFT trained JT therapist, I'm not sure, we have reached a plateau and are stuck. We started with a new, I don't know what JT.
Joint therapist.
Oh, joint. Thank you. There's so many alphabet things in this field. It's like, but I was like, JT, like I'm going to what kind of therapist? Joint. Okay. Therapist, and have a way to go. I'm fully committed to my recovery and my relationship with my wife. I need to keep working on my defensiveness and dealing with my rejection wound during this healing separation, regardless of how it turns out. My EMDR and mindfulness help, and I'll retake your I don't know if he did your retreat or Troy has a work group online as well, but I know my wife needs to figure out what she wants to be. I want to be in a healthy place for both of us, but it's so hard. So I don't see a question here, but maybe you can comment.
So he's struggling to feel okay with his wife asking for a healing separation, especially after you've done a lot of work. So I know that you two have been married for a long time, and even though your wife may not have known a lot about your acting out for a long time, she was supportive of you for a long time. This is not to make you feel guilty or to shame you, but to say, like, how long did your wife provide support for you when you were acting out and doing things and lying and those kind of things? And so now all of a sudden she's working on herself and she's starting to have some boundaries, and she's like, I care about you, but I'm not sure that I want to be in this. And does it hurt? Yeah, absolutely it hurts. And that is, I think cognitively, that is part of her journey. She's trying to sort some stuff out. And I love that you are still dedicated to her, still dedicated to the relationship and wanting to show up as best you can. And it's going to hurt because it's bumping up against rejection. It's bumping up against abuse, which is a wound that you've had for a long time, especially the mother wound and all those kind of things that come up for you. And so part of that is recognizing, okay, so I know this is going to hurt. I know that it is going to hurt. What can I do in a healthy way to tend to the wounds? Sometimes when a wound is so bad that some of the skin has died, it's called necrotizing wounds, the skin has died, it prevents the wound from being able to be healed. So they take the person into surgery and they scrape off the dead stuff. And they put the person under anesthesia because if they didn't, it would be incredibly painful. And they scrape it off, getting rid of all the dead stuff. The wound is now raw and open, and yet it is in a better place to be able to heal. And so to kind of reframe it and say, like, look, there's been a lot of pain. My wife's has some huge betrayal. I have some rejection and huge abuse. Both of us are dealing with a lot of pain. This might be what we're needing to do to clean this off. And I'm willing to continue to hold space to help the healing work for us. And while you're doing that, you're continuing to connect with your truth that I'm enough and I matter. And yes, I made some mistakes, but I am not making those mistakes anymore. And I'm working on remembering that I have value and I have worth, and so does my partner. And as you do that and you share that with other people and you let the other men in your life love on you, doesn't make the pain absolutely go away, no, but you are not having to do that by yourself. And although I'm not a fortune teller and every situation is different, the more that you're able to create space and groundedness for you and your wife, the better that relationship will be. Even if it ends in that you two are not married anymore, you two could be friends still. There could still be a really positive relationship with each other. And best case scenario is the two of you have figured out how to reconnect in ways that you never have done in your life before and spend the rest of your years together in joy and happiness. So that's best case scenario. You are in full control of how you tend to the wounds, both to yourself and your wife.
Well, and whether you stay together or not, if you've been in a relationship and you have children, you will always co-parent, you will co-grandparent, you will, so there's always those connection points and doing it with integrity. But the good thing that I hear here is with the healing separation, that sounds like there's a solid plan. This is, the time frame, these are the benchmarks, this is what we're looking to do. That would be hopeful, because then you have an idea. It isn't just this, without a plan, oh, we're separating. I always get a little fearful when I hear that, because I'm like, what are you going to look for, to be different? I hear often too, a partner is looking for him to have empathy. I'm like, be specific. What are you specifically looking for? How does he show that for you? Because that's, again, a term that, it's like overwhelming. And what does that mean? So the more concrete the plan is for this, the easier it is to navigate. So like Troy said, keep doing your work. You absolutely have control over what you do. And regardless of, how everything always works out, if I'm living in my integrity, I got no control over anybody else, but if I'm living in my integrity, I'm showing up, for the world in a way that is meaningful for me. So, okay. As a recovering addict, I'm overwhelmed with emotion from passing of a favorite relative this morning. Oh, I'm so sorry. Emotion is what I want to feel in recovery, but overwhelming emotions are still a lot to process. Only 9 months into recovery, I'm looking for healthy ways to process this grief instead of my old ways of locking away the emotions and acting out.
Well, I'm really proud of you for
Yeah.
having that intention. So thank you for sharing that. I'm sad with you about your loss. You're identifying a loss wound, which is painful in and of itself. And especially when we've been in our addiction for a long time, our tolerance to emotion is not that great. So you're identifying that like, it's still really hard. So who in your life is able to hold space while you cry? And know that your body, you're going to feel sad for a while, but your body can only like release emotion for a like about 20 minutes before it needs to stop, kind of regroup itself, and then it may do it again later. It's not like you're just 20 minutes a day and you're done. But to know that like it's gonna stop. Like your body's gonna recalibrate itself for a minute, and then you can try some more. Journaling, looking through pictures of what this person meant to you, talking about this person, what this person meant to you, talking to this person, sharing fun memories, painful memories, all of the kind of things with those people around you, hopefully, calling people. It's an opportunity to maybe even reach out to people you haven't talked to for a while, so that you don't have to do this all by yourself. You said it beautifully. I don't want to lock away my emotions and act out, which is really a way of acting in. Like I'm going to try and just manage all of this pain all by myself and try to do it all by myself. But no, like to know that grief is painful, and you are not the only one suffering. There are lots of people who are missing this favorite relative, because I'm guessing if they were your favorite relative, they were other people's favorite relative too. And so they are there with you. You're not alone in your suffering. So look for those who are also hurting and share stories and those kind of things, and be kind to yourself and do what you did today, which is reach out.
So I lost a favorite person late last year. This is still poking, but I have a frame like right here, one of the electronic ones, and I've literally got thousands of pictures, and I smile so often. I have so much. I mean, it hurts, but man, I have so much gratitude that I had that person in my life, and to be able to appreciate that, to be able to be aware of that. I'll take the pain. Honest, I will take the pain, because the joy and connection that I've had, is worth it. We never know how many days we have with anybody, and so being able to show up, like I mentioned a minute ago, be able to show up, be my true self. Hopefully this relative was seeing, in these past months, how you are shifting and changing, and you're showing up differently. So grateful you're here. There is healing. It's a journey, and it's worth the pain of losing somebody to have the joy of connecting with them. My opinion. Okay, now I'm going to wipe away some tears. Next question. In your opinion, who of the shadows is most damaging and hard to calm down? Ooh, that's a challenging
I
question.
love that question.
Yeah.
So the judge is the loudest and probably the most obnoxious, but is not the most damaging. It will probably surprise you, because a lot of people tell me they don't have this one, but they do. It is the royal. The royal is the one who tells you that you are entitled and you deserve. And can't they just see you? And why can't they just recognize you? And so what happens when that shows up is it gives me permission to treat everybody else badly. It gives me permission as an addict to go act out, because I'm entitled to that. I had a really bad day. I'm entitled to that, and I should get what I want. It gives me permission to judge and blame my partner and point out all of my partner's flaws and defects rather than owning my own. And so in doing so, it damages the relationship with my loved ones. It gives me permission to criticize the person who's giving me my food order and treat them less than and not feel bad about it. So there's an activity that I do sometimes with the men in my group, and they will look at all of their numbing behaviors, and then they'll identify which shadow played the biggest role in all of those. And the surprising majority of people come up with the royal of just how much of entitlement, and for the betrayed partner too. Like, I deserve to be treated better. I deserve, and why can't you treat me better? Instead of, I am worthy of being treated better, and you haven't figured that out yet. So, hey, I'm going to take care of myself in a healthy way, rather than like there's anger and resentment that comes with the royal, that when I'm grounded in my truth, there's just peace. It's like, what you're doing is just not working for me. So you got to try something different, but I'm moving this direction. So there's something about it. So that's who I think is the most damaging. It's also the most subtle, because most people can't even recognize when the royal shows up until somebody points it out.
And it's always fun to have that pointed out, but that's a lot of fun. You're being a royal. So yeah.
Yeah.
That makes my day. So
Yeah.
no, yeah. Well, and I mentioned I did the retreat, and there was one that I sure didn't want to, have to deal with. And I was like, oh, how fun to have that glaring, when you start doing the work and you go, it wasn't the royal, but it was a different one that I didn't want. So,
Yeah.
and I was just like, okay, but you know what, it's, owning it, you kind of go, okay, I will own it, and I don't have to like it, but I can also then work on it, because anything I don't own, I'm not working on. So it's a lot of work, but it's so worth it. Like, and I've shared this before too, but like, it's a journey, and I know everybody's going like, I want to get over this or through this, or like I want it to be, magically different, and it's not. This is stuff, as we're talking about, like you talked about earlier on, attachment wounds from birth. So
Yeah.
how are we going to magically get through that in 60 days or something? It isn't, but but the gifts of, like this person said, I lost somebody important to me, and I'm feeling overwhelming emotion. I'm feeling something that I didn't get to feel when I was in active addiction, because every emotion was like completely shut down, good and bad. So it's a gift, and a pain, and a gift, and a pain.
Both. Yeah.
Any other? So Troy has so first of all, Troy does this, for us once a month. And then he on Fridays is working with the guys on the drop-in group. He also has twice a month on Thursdays, the Betrayed Partners. So check those out. They're all on our Seeking Integrity website. The work group will start again. So there's a Finding Peace work group. That's the 6-week online course, for men, that will start again in April. So check that out, 90 minutes a week. Live facilitated with Troy, and I'm sure it probably goes a little over 90 minutes a week, because I think that's what I've heard. Anyway, so regardless, check that out. You can register for that, and of course, any help we can be, just email me, and I will do my best to help provide resources. So thank you again, my friend. Always great to see you. Thanks for switching. Kristen will be here in 2 weeks. Dr. Eddie Caparucci next week. So thanks, everybody. Great questions. Bye.
Bye.